Have you ever considered that a man's true feelings for you might not be found in his words at all? His deepest emotions are often hidden in something much more honest and revealing: how he acts during intimacy. It might sound strange or even bold, but this concept is actually based on some of the most respected psychological ideas of the past century. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who changed how we look at the mind, believed that love is more than just a simple feeling. He saw it as a raw, instinctive force that comes out in moments of deep vulnerability. This means the truth of how a man feels isn't always something he can say, but it can be seen during those silent, exposed moments. Today we are looking at 4 unconscious behaviors that show devotion rather than just desire. These are not tricks or habits, they are emotional truths. If you have ever wondered if what you have is real or just physical, these signs will help you see the truth more clearly. Let's start with the first sign, which is deep eye contact during intimacy. At first, this seems simple, but think about what happens when a man cannot stop looking at you in those moments. It is not just about lust, it is something quieter. Jung famously said that the eyes are the windows to the soul. In the unconscious mind, a gaze is a direct signal of truth. People can lie with words and pretend with actions, but the eyes expose who we really are. A man who is truly in love might not even realize he is staring. It happens naturally. In that moment, he isn't just looking at your body, he is showing you his own emotional reality, his trust, and his surrender. I used to think long eye contact was just about passion or ego, but I don't believe that anymore. When a man keeps his eyes locked on yours while he is most vulnerable, he is allowing himself to be seen. He is saying that he has nothing to hide. Whether he knows it or not, that is a powerful act of love. However, we should not romanticize every look. Not every intense stare means love. This sign needs to be understood alongside what Jung called the anima, or the inner feminine side of a man. When this part of a man is awake, he doesn't look for control, he looks for connection. His gaze becomes less about owning you and more about being present with you. It is a subtle and unforgettable feeling. On the other hand, if a man avoids your eyes, it might mean he is guarded. Avoiding eye contact doesn't always mean he doesn't care. It can be a form of protection or a fear of being seen too clearly. It shows that if love exists, it is still struggling with hidden feelings like shame or fear. When two people finally do hold that gaze, the world fades away and the ego disappears. In that stillness, he is telling you that you are not just a body to him, but a home. The next sign is when a man focuses more on your pleasure than his own. This isn't about him trying to impress you. It happens as if he cannot help it. In Jungian thought, this is a deep act of devotion. When a man truly loves, he doesn't have to try to put you first. Something instinctive takes over. This is selfless giving. Jung talked about a sacred union where opposites blend together. A man driven by lust wants a release, but a man driven by love wants unity. He becomes tuned into your breath and your rhythm. He learns what you like through quiet attention rather than just asking questions. You will notice it in small ways, like how he slows down when you need time or how he remembers what made you feel good before. This shift from performing to being present is where love lives. This kind of giving is healing. It shows he is no longer ruled by a need to prove himself. It is important to remember that true giving is calm, not desperate. When he moves from his ego to empathy, intimacy becomes an emotional truth. What if he is just very experienced? The answer isn't in his skill level, but in the feeling behind his actions. Does his care continue after the lights go out? The real sign of love is found in how he treats you once the physical act is over. Love doesn't stop when the pleasure ends. His body language afterward reveals if he sees you as sacred. This is not a man trying to prove his talent. It is a man who has seen your worth and feels his own tenderness. This leads us to the third sign, his openness and tenderness after intimacy. What a man does when the moment ends says more about his heart than any "I love you" whispered in the heat of passion. Jung believed that our masks fall off during these vulnerable times. When a man truly loves, the afterglow becomes an emotional truth serum. He might hold you longer just to stay close to you. He might share a story or a fear he has never told anyone else. These gestures are signs of emotional safety. Most men are taught that being masculine means pulling away, so when he stays close, he is showing real courage and breaking old patterns. If a man disappears emotionally right after sex, it might be because he doesn't know how to stay open. His defenses come back up to keep him safe. But when a man stays with you in the stillness, it is a confession of trust. He trusts you with his soul, not just his body. Trust isn't always built with words. Sometimes it is shown in the way he reaches for you in the dark. The body has its own language that we don't consciously control. When love is genuine, that rhythm deepens into the fourth sign, synchronized movement and unconscious mirroring. You don't plan to breathe at the same time or move in the same way. It just happens. Your bodies fall into a dance that you both already know. Jung called this an ancient connection where the line between two people fades. When a man is deeply bonded to you, his nervous system aligns with yours. This isn't just a romantic idea. It is biological. It happens when emotional safety is so deep that the body joins the conversation. This kind of harmony cannot be faked. Unlike sweet words, it comes straight from the unconscious mind. When his body moves in tune with yours, it means he is fully present, emotionally and spiritually. Casual encounters rarely reach this level because the body stays cautious. But when love is real, those barriers fall away. Mirroring is the psyche saying that this place is safe. These four signs, eye contact, selfless giving, emotional openness, and mirroring, are not a checklist, but experiences you can feel in your bones. True love shows itself in the spaces between words. It lives in the way his eyes soften and the way his touch listens. When these signs are present, he doesn't just say he loves you, he demonstrates it. Now, think about your own life. Does your partner show these signs? Have you felt that effortless harmony and tenderness? Or have you noticed their absence? The body never lies about love. Jung saw love as a moment where the soul speaks through touch and gaze. These signs are confessions, not performances. If a man doesn't show all these signs, it doesn't always mean he doesn't love you. He might just be struggling with his own fears or emotional walls. Understanding these signs helps you see where you stand. When you look at love with honesty, you begin to truly understand it. If this reflection helped you, stay curious and keep exploring these deeper connections. Next, we will look at the shadows, the red flags that show when a connection is built on an illusion rather than real love. Until then, remember that truth lives in the silence between words. Now we must look at the darker side of these ideas, which Jung called the shadow. Just as there are signs of deep, real love, there are also patterns that look like love, but are actually based on illusions. It is easy to get swept away by intense feelings, but sometimes what we feel isn't a connection to the other person. Instead, it is a connection to a fantasy we have created in our own minds. This is what happens when we project our own needs and hidden desires onto someone else. We don't see the man for who he really is. We only see the image we want him to be. This is why some relationships feel incredibly fast and powerful at the start, but leave you feeling empty and confused later on. One major red flag is when the intensity of intimacy feels like a performance rather than a connection. In these cases, the eye contact we talked about earlier might feel forced or like a tool for control rather than a moment of vulnerability. If a man is using intimacy to feed his own ego or to hide his insecurities, the giving will feel different. It won't feel like a calm flow. It will feel like he is trying too hard to earn your praise. This is not the sacred union Jung described. It is a man trying to escape his own shadows by losing himself in the act. When the moment ends, the silence doesn't feel safe or warm. Instead, it feels cold or lonely, as if a wall has suddenly been built between you. Jung believed that if a man hasn't faced his own inner shadows, his fears, his anger, or his past wounds, he cannot truly see you. He might be physically there, but emotionally he is miles away, trapped in his own internal battle. You might notice that he is very present during the physical act, but the second it is over, he becomes a stranger again. This emotional vanishing is a sign that he is using intimacy as a distraction rather than a way to bond. He isn't meeting your soul, he is just running away from his own. When a relationship is built on these shadows, the synchronization we mentioned earlier doesn't happen naturally. Everything feels slightly out of rhythm, as if you are both following different songs. Understanding these red flags is not about judging him, but about protecting your own heart. Real love requires two people to be honest about their own darkness. If someone refuses to look at their own shadow, they will eventually cast that shadow onto you. You might start feeling responsible for his happiness or guilty for his moods. This is why you must listen to your intuition. If something feels off even when the words sound right, trust that feeling. The unconscious mind picks up on these hidden patterns long before our logical brain does. Love should feel like coming home, not like being lost in a maze. By recognizing these illusions, you clear the way for a connection that is actually built on truth and real emotional depth. While the signs of devotion are beautiful, we have to talk about the deeper, more confusing side of the mind. Jung warned that where there is great light, there is also a shadow. In relationships, this shadow often shows up as projection. This happens when a man doesn't actually see you for who you are, but instead treats you like a screen for his own hidden fantasies or needs. You might feel like he is in love with an idea of you rather than the real person. This is why some connections feel incredibly intense at the start, but eventually feel empty. It wasn't built on a real bond, but on a temporary illusion that couldn't last once the real world broke through. One major warning sign is what Jung called inflation. This is when a man acts like a hero or a perfect lover to avoid facing his own insecurities. During intimacy, he might seem incredibly focused on you, but it feels like a performance. It is loud and theatrical rather than quiet and deep. He isn't giving to you because he loves you. He is giving so he can feel good about himself. If you feel like you have to constantly applaud his performance or reassure his ego, you are dealing with his shadow, not his soul. True devotion is a gift that requires no payment, but shadow giving always comes with an invisible bill. Another sign that something is wrong is the emotional chill that happens after closeness. We talked about how a loving man stays present, but a man caught in his shadow will often pull away instantly. This isn't just about being tired, it is an unconscious defense mechanism. Because he hasn't dealt with his own internal wounds, real closeness feels dangerous to him. He might become cold, start an argument over something small, or suddenly need to leave. This push and pull creates a cycle of trauma bonding, where the highs are very high and the lows are very low. You might mistake this roller coaster for passion, but in reality, it is just two people's shadows clashing in the dark. The final thing to watch for is a lack of resonance. When love is real, your lives begin to blend in a way that feels natural. But when a connection is built on a shadow, your life outside the bedroom feels disconnected. He might be attentive when the lights are low, but indifferent to your dreams, your fears, or your daily struggles. Jung believed that a man who is disconnected from his own inner feminine side will always struggle to truly value the woman in front of him. He will see her as a tool for his own comfort rather than a partner. Trust your gut if you feel like you are being used for an emotional release rather than being seen for your humanity. When you start to see these shadows, the most important question is whether the connection can be saved or if it is time to walk away. This brings us to the concept of emotional maturity and the inner work Jung emphasized. A man who is trapped in his shadow is not necessarily a bad person, but he is a person who is not yet whole. If he is unwilling to look at his own fears or habits, the cycle of pulling away and performing will never stop. You cannot fix his shadow for him. In fact, trying to save him often leads to a savior complex, where you lose your own peace trying to guide him toward a light he isn't ready to see. The true test of a relationship's future is how he reacts when the honeymoon phase or the physical high ends. In a healthy connection, the transition from the peak of passion to the reality of daily life is gentle. There is a sense of friendship and mutual respect that carries you through. But in a shadow-based relationship, this transition feels like a crash. When the intensity drops, the man might feel bored or restless because he was only there for the high of the projection. He wasn't actually there for you. If he only values the moments of peak excitement and ignores the quiet, mundane parts of your life, he is still chasing a fantasy. You also have to look at your own role in this dance. Jung believed that we often attract people who represent our own unlived lives. If you find yourself repeatedly drawn to men who are emotionally unavailable or performative, it might be because a part of you is afraid of true, consistent intimacy as well. Sometimes we choose the roller coaster because a steady, calm love feels boring or scary to our nervous system. Healing these patterns starts with realizing that you deserve a love that doesn't make you feel anxious. Real love should be a source of strength, not a constant puzzle you have to solve. Finally, remember that your intuition is your greatest tool. If you feel like you are walking on eggshells, or if you feel more lonely when you are with him than when you are alone, that is your soul speaking to you. Jung taught that the goal of life is individuation, becoming your true, unique self. Any relationship that hinders that growth or makes you shrink to fit into someone else's shadow is not the path to your highest good. By paying attention to these signs and shadows, you gain the power to choose a partner who truly sees you, mirrors your soul, and walks beside you in the light. Once you recognize these patterns, you have to face the most difficult part, the choice to stay or leave. This is where we look at what Jung called emotional maturity. A man who lives in his shadows isn't always a bad person, but he is someone who isn't yet whole. If he refuses to look at his own habits or fears, his cycle of performing and pulling away will never end. You cannot fix his shadow for him. Trying to save someone often leads to you losing your own peace while trying to show them a light they aren't ready to see. You must also look at your own part in this story. Jung believed we often attract people who reflect our own unlived lives. If you find yourself constantly drawn to men who are emotionally distant or fake, it might be because a part of you is also afraid of real, steady intimacy. Sometimes a calm and consistent love feels boring to a nervous system that is used to chaos. Healing begins when you realize that you deserve a love that provides peace instead of anxiety. Real love should be a source of strength, not a puzzle you have to solve every day. Your intuition is your best guide. If you feel like you are walking on eggshells, or if you feel more alone when you are with him than when you are by yourself, that is your soul talking to you. Jung taught that the goal of life is to become our true, unique selves. Any relationship that makes you shrink or hide who you are is not helping you grow. By watching for these signs and shadows, you gain the power to choose someone who truly mirrors your soul and walks beside you in the light. To truly understand if a man is capable of moving from his shadow into his soul, you have to look at his ability to reflect. Jung believed that the unexamined life is where all toxic patterns live. If you bring up your feelings and he meets them with anger, blame, or complete silence, he is still protecting his ego. But if he can sit in the discomfort, listen without getting defensive, and honestly say, "I didn't realize I was doing that," there is hope. That moment of self-awareness is the bridge between a connection built on illusion and one built on reality. This leads us to the final stage of Jungian intimacy, the third thing. Jung suggested that in a truly deep relationship, it is not just about you and me. Instead, the two people create a third entity, the relationship itself, which has its own life and needs. When a man is in his soul, he cares about the health of this third thing even more than his own need to be right. He stops seeing disagreements as a win-lose battle and starts seeing them as a way to clear the air so the bond can breathe. This is the highest form of love, where the ego is finally set aside for the sake of something greater. If you find yourself in a place where you need to start over, do not see the past as a failure. Jung viewed every relationship as a psychological experiment. Even the shadow relationships teach you exactly what your soul is no longer willing to tolerate. They sharpen your intuition. When you finally meet someone who is ready to be seen, you won't need a checklist of signs. You will feel it in the way your body relaxes the moment they walk into the room. You will feel it in the way the silence between you feels like a conversation rather than a void. The journey from the physical act to the spiritual bond is the most important path a person can walk. It requires courage to look at the truth, whether that truth is beautiful or painful. But by trusting the language of the body and the wisdom of the unconscious, you stop being a victim of chance and start becoming the creator of your own love story. The truth has always been there, waiting in the quiet moments. All you have to do is keep listening. After exploring the third thing and the hope for change, we come to the final step of this journey, integration. This is the moment where you stop looking at his behavior as a riddle and start seeing your relationship as a complete picture. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of any human connection is wholeness. This means accepting that even in a deep, loving relationship, there will be moments of shadow, but the difference is how you handle them together. In a soulful connection, you don't hide the dark parts. You bring them into the light so they lose their power over you. This leads to a sense of unshakable peace. When a man is truly integrated and in love, his consistency becomes his greatest gift. You no longer have to wonder if the man you saw during intimacy will be the same man you see the next morning at breakfast. The mask and the soul have finally merged. He is the same person in his strength as he is in his vulnerability. This reliability is the true foundation of a long-term bond. It is not as flashy as the initial passion, but it is much more durable. It is the difference between a spark that burns out and a fire that keeps the house warm. If you are currently feeling a sense of clarity, or even a bit of sadness after realizing some truths, know that this is part of the process. Awareness is often uncomfortable at first, but it is the only way to reach a love that is real. Jung often said that There is no coming to consciousness without pain. But that pain is actually the breaking of an old shell that was keeping you small. By understanding the unconscious language of intimacy, the eye contact, the selfless giving, the afterglow, and the mirroring, you have given yourself a map. You are no longer lost. You are observing. As you move forward, carry this truth with you. Love is a living thing. It breathes, it changes, and it speaks through the body when the mind is too tired to try. Trust what you feel in those quiet, exposed moments. Trust the silence. Whether you are building a deeper bond with your current partner or preparing your heart for someone new, remember that you are worthy of a connection that feels like home. The truth is not something you have to hunt for. It is something that reveals itself when you are brave enough to listen. Once you understand the balance between the light and the dark, you arrive at the final destination of this psychological journey, the realization that love is a teacher. Jung believed that our relationships are the primary way we grow as individuals. Every moment of closeness, every shared look, and even every shadow we encounter is a mirror reflecting our own inner world. When you stop asking, "Does he love me?" and start asking, "What is this connection showing me about myself?" everything changes. You move from being a passive observer to being an active participant in your own emotional life. This level of awareness brings a new kind of power. You begin to notice that when a man is truly aligned with you, the relationship doesn't feel like a struggle or a constant negotiation. It feels like a natural extension of who you are. The silent language we have discussed becomes your default way of communicating. You no longer need to analyze every move because you trust the rhythm you have built together. This is what Jung called the conjunction, where two people remain individuals but function as a single harmonious unit. It is the ultimate goal of intimacy, to be fully yourself while being fully connected to another. However, if the signs are missing and the shadows are too heavy, this final stage is your signal to let go with grace. Letting go isn't a failure. It is an act of self-love. It is a way of telling the universe that you have learned the lesson this specific psychological experiment had to offer, and you are ready for the next chapter. By closing a door that leads nowhere, you finally give yourself the space to walk through a door that leads home. You stop settling for a performance and start waiting for a presence. In the end, the secret to understanding a man's feelings is to trust your own body's response to him. The mind can be easily fooled by charming words or high expectations, but your nervous system knows the truth. It knows when it is safe to relax, when it is being honored, and when it is being used. Carry this wisdom with you into every room and every embrace. Love is not a mystery to be solved. It is a truth to be lived. When you listen to the silence and watch the unconscious signs, the truth will always make itself known. This brings us to the ultimate realization of this journey. Once you understand the signs and the shadows, you reach a state of deep emotional clarity. This is where the work of the mind meets the wisdom of the heart. Jung believed that the most profound stage of a relationship is when you no longer need to look for clues because the truth has become a part of your daily life. You stop searching for hidden meanings and start living in the reality of a shared soul. At this point, you see that intimacy is not a destination you reach, but a language you speak every day. It is found in the way he supports your growth and how he stands by you when things are difficult. The behaviors we talked about, the deep gaze and the selfless giving, become the steady background of your life. They aren't just special moments anymore. They are the foundation of your trust. This is the goal of individuation within a couple. You both remain strong, independent people, but you are joined by a bond that doesn't require words to be understood. As you look back on everything we have explored, remember that your intuition is your compass. The body does not lie. When a man truly loves you, his actions, his eyes, and his presence will tell you the story. You don't have to guess or wonder in the dark. Love is a light, and when it is real, it illuminates everything. It makes you feel seen, safe, and whole. Trust that feeling. Trust the silence. And most of all, trust yourself to know the difference between a fleeting shadow and a soul that has finally found its home.